Konnichiwa! Welcome to another episode of the Nihongo podcast. This time not in German, but in English. Today I want to talk about anime and manga and their influences on the entertainment industry and the West. Who could be better to talk to than Tom Bilyeu? He wants to become the next Disney and is obsessed with anime and manga. He's a very successful entrepreneur, the CEO and co-founder of Impact Theory and the co-founder of Quest Nutrition. I'm very excited to talk to him about anime and manga and what he thinks is the future of it. But before we start, I want to thank my sponsor washindojp.com. Washindo JP is an online store which sells original Japanese products. Their approach is to only sell products that are manufactured and produced in Japan. They have a lot of interesting products like original Japanese Lucky Charms, handmade kokeshis or hand fans. They also ship worldwide, and if you like Japanese products, washindojp.com is the way to go. So let's jump right into the interview. Thank you so much for having this interview with me. It's really an honor to me. So could you briefly introduce yourself so that my listeners know who you are and what you are doing?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to this. It's a lot of fun. My name's Tom Bilyeu, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. My last company was a company called Quest Nutrition, and we took that from not existing to being valued at over $1 billion in 5 years. I exited that company to build the next Disney. And so my new company is called Impact Theory, and it's all about storytelling. And I am fiendish around manga and anime. And that's really our central thesis from a storytelling standpoint, is taking a very Japanese approach to the actual story style. So I have immersed myself in that story structure and read a lot of manga, watched a lot of anime, and hopefully we can now show that the West can hang and tell, a similar kind of story.
So this is very interesting, I think, because you're an American, right? So you have Disney, you have Marvel, you have all these great comics, and I think Disney is kind of anime. So where does come your passion for anime and manga from? What makes it Japanese different?
Well, that's a very big question, and maybe has two different answers. So what makes Japan different is that in the West, we are moving more and more towards trying to get kids entertainment to be mashed all together, what we call a 4-quadrant story. So it's one story that appeals to adults, to kids, to boys, to girls. And the Japanese are very good at saying, this is meant for boys, 11 to 15. This is meant for girls, 11 to 15. And not getting confused and thinking that they're all the same. And so when you make a story that's for girls, then, 80 to 85% of the audience for that is going to be girls. And that doesn't mean that it can't be enjoyed by boys, but it will be far less typical for a boy to be reading shoujo than for a boy to be reading shonen. So in getting behind the psychological research of that as to why that's true, I think it's really, really powerful, very interesting. And so when you're trying to launch a company that tells stories, you want to really understand your market. And I'm looking at what the American market is doing in comics, and it's just declining every year. The sales are getting less and less and less. And it leads you to ask the question, well, who's doing it well? And that leads you straight to Japan and leads you straight to manga. And so Demon Slayer, which I know has a different title in Japanese, and unfortunately I can't remember the exact title.
Kimetsu no Yaiba.
There we go. Thank you. And that one title outsells all of the American comic market. So Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Thor, Spider-Man, X-Men, all of them combined sell less than Demon Slayer. So in researching the manga market and trying to figure out why it works so well, led me to that conclusion that, even the words that they have for it, shonen and shoujo and seinen, you really begin to understand that they aim at a very specific demographic. And so we wanted to pick up that torch, but that isn't the only thing. They also, it's really a different style of storytelling. So in the US, it's a very 3-act structure. It's very finite. It ends, we don't have things like One Piece, which, has been running for 25 years with one creator and one storyline. And it's a very different story structure that I call the infinite story structure. And where it can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on forever.
Yeah, it never ends.
And be enjoyable, right? So that's not something that we have historically done. What we do is we tell a story and then we stop, and then we reboot it, and we tell a story and we stop, and then we start over and we stop, instead of creating these, really long running stories. So you put those two things together, and that's what drew me to Japanese style storyteller, what makes Japan different. Yes. And then my own personal interest, one, I'm a total freak for robots. So the first thing I did when I went to Tokyo was go to Diver City Mall. I wanted to see, the giant Gundam robot. Yes. And just any country that has a, 3-story robot at their mall is my kind of place. So I'm really fascinated by Japanese culture. I'm really fascinated by the visual aesthetic of anime, the way that they handle robots. Even going back to Akira, which I saw when I was a teenager, just being absolutely blown away by how different and how mature animation was, where really here in the US until the early 2000s, animation was for kids, period. And it was really only the Japanese, at least that made it, over here to America, that were telling animated stories for adults. And so that was also part of what drew me in to that aesthetic.
Yeah, in German, it's actually the same. Anime was for kids, and I watched a lot as a kid, and Dragon Ball or One Piece, and I was very fascinated. And yeah, that's right. It's very interesting. I think you talked about Demon Slayer, and I wanted to talk about Demon Slayer too, because as you said, the film. Do you watch the film Mugen Train?
I haven't yet because I'm too far behind on the anime, but I'm very excited to get to it.
So I watched it twice in cinema here in Japan because it was so good, and all the Japanese people from kids to adults, they all watched it. So in Japan, they call it shakai gensho. I think it's social phenomenon because it's so popular. And what are your thoughts? Why this anime is so popular? Do you have any thoughts on this?
That is a bigger question. I think a lot about the energy of an audience and like where they go and what projects they rally around and really get behind. And I mean, look, Demon Slayer is gorgeous. So start with that. It is absolutely, from just a normal series, visually is one of the best things that's out right now. And then add to that they've done a very good job of keeping the manga and the anime popular. So you've got this big buildup of fan base. On top of that, the animation is being done extraordinarily well. On top of that, you add that you're now moving into the film world to continue the story, and you're upping the production quality. So I think putting all of that together is what made it big. But what turned it into a social phenomena, I don't know. I don't know if part of it was that it's happening during COVID. You guys at that time weren't that locked down though, whereas we were really locked down. So to see, it did like $250 million or something.
Yeah,
I was like,
crazy.
What is happening?
It's crazy.
So my mind was completely blown. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. So, as a fan of the anime, I'm not surprised it's popular, but I wouldn't have predicted that it would become the phenomena that it became. And so that there's some magical sauce in there somewhere that I don't know.
I have a little theory about this, because I thought a lot about this, and I think Demon Slayer has a lot of Japanese mythological elements. So I know, do you know the Kojiki?
No.
The Kojiki is the first written paper in Japan, which they found, and it was completed in 712. And in the Kojiki, there are all the stories of the Japanese Shinto gods. And Demon Slayer contains a lot of these elements and these gods and myths. And I watched a lot Jordan Peterson, and he always says that in the biblical stories or these old myths, there's an underlying reality and there's a moral codex, I think you can say. And I wonder whether this has something to do with successful animes, because what I noticed is that a lot of successful animes have this Japanese mythology in it. So do you think...
One thing on that point, and this doesn't necessarily apply specifically to Demon Slayer, although it also contains this, seeing how often and how easily the Japanese get into a story where it's humans versus demons, or humans versus, some gods that have fallen to earth, you get that battle manga setup. And as a writer, one of the things you're always trying to figure out is, what is the setup to the story? How am I going to keep this going, right? And so as in Western terms, we would say it's the second act that never ends, what I was referring to earlier as the infinite story structure. And you need like constant new challenges and battles. And when it's the same person over and over and over, that gets really hard to make that work over the long run. But the Japanese are just, there's so many stories where it's us versus the demons, right? So whether it's Demon Slayer, whether it's Jujutsu Kaisen, whether it's Bleach, whether, any one of the stories where it's that, right? There's this mixing of the demon world and the human world, and we have to go to battle. And so then you get these progressively more difficult demons that you have to fight towards. You're learning different skills. You find other people that battle the same demons that, because they can see them. And so it's like this really classic setup. And that allows you to keep that story momentum going and going and going. And so in the West, we really have to borrow that mythology, because we come from a mono deist culture where there's one God. And so most of the religions that are practiced in the US, there's a single God. So there isn't that sense of like, I'm going to battle against all these demons and things like that. So we don't as readily, you do see it, but we don't as readily go to these sort of high myth demons, right? So for us, it doesn't have the same cultural resonance.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never thought about this, but I think that's right. The Japanese have a lot of these shrines. Do you, went to a shrine when you were in Japan? So
of course.
They are over, that's, how do I say it? They are all over the place, everywhere, yes. And every shrine has a different type of god. So I think in total they have over 8 million gods. and demons too. Bad. So demons play a very interesting and important role in the Japanese life. And you even have in the prefecture Nara, you have demon toilets. They say that are stone formations, and they say, there was the demon. And so I think it's something which is in the Japanese, maybe psyche, I don't know, archetypes or something like that. So that's very,
and it's fascinating how much that really does shape your storytelling. Like as a writer, I don't find myself thinking about, demons and gods and things like that. Whereas it's so much more prevalent in Japan. Like you said, 8 million gods, there's shrines around every corner. There's a sense that your ancestors are very present. And so all of that creates this very recognizable milieu of story elements. And they just so happen to lend themselves to that infinite story structure of, okay, you beat that demon, but what about this demon? Okay, you beat that one, but what about this one? And so it's that's part of how, these storytelling traditions over time become so unique and so different, and is part of what, as a Western creator, you don't just want to slot in your own, like, oh, here we go, we're going to fight demons just like they were doing. So you want to find something that has the same kind of cultural relevance here, but has that equally replicatable, and now we're going to fight this person, and now we're going to fight that person. But that really does give Japan a leg up. The number of times where that's like the go-to in the story of, we've just unleashed 6,000 demons and we have to go fight them is, it's really, really interesting.
So why do you think the West has a hunger for this? Because anime becomes very popular in the last years, and many of my friends too love anime. They say it's anime, give me something. So why do you think the West has this hunger for anime and manga?
So I have a thesis on this. So it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, which a big part of it is that it's not watered down. So have you read Chainsaw Man?
No, I didn't read it.
Oh my God, you were in for a treat. Okay, so imagine the setup of Chainsaw Man is this down on his luck, abused, neglected, poor, kid. All he wants, literally, all he wants in life is to touch a girl's boob. Like, that's it. That's his driving force. But there's real heart, right? So he has this dog, and the dog dies, like has to merge with him in order to save the kid. And so he becomes one with this sort of demon dog. And it sounds absurd, but you mesh together two things. This brokenhearted kid whose only friend has to die to save him. And all he wants in life is to have food to eat, a place to sleep, and he wants to touch a girl's boob. And so if you're a boy, that's so easy to relate to. So easy to relate to. So that's one. We would never tell that story in the West. No way. People would be up in arms that he wants to touch a girl's boob. And by the way, he does. And in the story, they show it. And you're like, to a Western audience, we're like, whoa. And then what's even more fascinating is the real depth of thematics and emotion. So imagine, spoiler alert for anybody that wants to read Chainsaw Man. So this kid merges with this demon, is being sort of taken advantage of by this demon hunting governmental organization. And he finally does all of this, and he gets to touch a girl's boob. And he's like, that wasn't as cool as I thought it would be. And you're just like, whoa, like that really is kind of that moment that we all go through of like, I thought my life would be different. I thought it would change everything, and it doesn't, right? And so imagine this is written, for young boys, and it's really on the edge from a Western sensibility. It's really on this edge of like, will my parents be upset if I'm reading this? But yet I can totally relate to this. And this like is, I didn't think anybody else was having these thoughts or these feelings. And here they are, manifesting. I get the fighting and the chainsaws and demons and transformation, but I also get that sex scares me a little bit. I want it, but I'm also scared and I'm not sure what to do. And then they ratchet it up a level. And when he has this moment of crisis where it's like, my whole life was leading towards that, I finally get to do it, and it doesn't have the major impact on my life that I thought it would have. And then an older woman comes along and does this. I still can't believe how well they executed this, but this moment of seduction to show this boy that like, it's better, like sex is better when you connect, when you know the other person. And they do this whole scene that was like so graphic. And I was like, oh my God, I was literally, I'm a grown man. And I was like looking over my shoulder, like, are people going to see me reading this? And that sense of like, I'm maybe not supposed to read this, but it's so true and it's done so well, but there's so much heart and emotion. And it's just like these creators are taking it so seriously. Whereas in the West, it would just be stripped of all the real human emotion, and it would just be the fighting and the chainsaws, and that would be it. And there wouldn't be any like, I wanted to touch a girl's boob, but it was kind of disappointing. And then somebody, really showing sort of what a more mature sexual awakening would be. And I was like, oh my God, this story is about the existential dread of discovering sex, and yet is also about a kid who merges with a demon dog and fights people with a chainsaw face. You know what I mean? So it's like how the way that they bring it together, and the writers are having fun and really trying to touch on something real in the human experience and the human psyche. And so it's like the US is busy making things sterile, trying to make sure that girls will like it, boys will like it, parents will like it.
Everyone will like it.
Yeah, instead of being like, yo, you're an 11 to 15-year-old boy. This is going to speak to you, man.
Yes.
You are going to love this. And it's what I call illicit literature. It makes you feel a little bit like you hope your parents don't walk in. You know what I mean? And so, but kids want that. It's that sense of like, I'm getting older, I'm maturing.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yes.
And so somewhere, and I mean this literally, somewhere back in probably the mid 90s, the American market stopped appealing to kids, forgot what kids actually want, which is that sense of like, whoa, I'm really discovering something. Oh my God, I'm understood. I didn't think anybody else was having these thoughts, right? Yeah. And we simplified and we talked down to kids. And for that reason, kids just stopped reading traditional comic books, and now they're just on Webtoon. And so they're reading the closest thing that they can get to manga.
Yes, that's right. Everything has to be political correct in the West, right? That's something I noticed too. The Japanese, they don't care about political correctness or something. They just do. They say this is the truth, and we want to, tell the truth in form of a story. Yeah, that's very interesting. I think you are exactly right in this. So is there anything you learned from an anime or manga, you mindset-wise, or?
Dude, that's one of the coolest things about anime and manga is that at the core of shonen stories is friendship, self-improvement, hard work, picking yourself up when you fail. It's like these amazing life lessons wrapped in these, grand, crazy adventures. So, yes, I mean, I came to anime and manga when I was pretty late in my, psychological journey. So I won't say that I necessarily learned it from reading it, but when I see it reflected in there, I'm like, whoa, we've got to get more kids reading this stuff, because this is actually real life advice like that. One thing that comes across a lot in anime and manga is the student-teacher relationship.
Oh, yes.
That you can find a mentor or a sensei that's going to help you on your journey, and that there's tremendous reverence paid for that. And you see when the student, gets cocky or arrogant, it's like they end up getting in trouble, right? And then the teacher has to show them like, look, you're getting better, but you're not there yet. And so you have to be careful. And so that sense of like the way the stories progress, and they progress over long periods of time, it's really pretty extraordinary. So yeah, I think there's a ton of mindset to be found in anime and manga.
Yes, I learned a lot, I think, through watching anime and manga, especially this notion of getting better. Most animes have this, I think. For example, Attack on Titan. So I think the character development of the protagonist it's outstanding.
Dude, Attack on Titan it's one of the most jaw-dropping things I've ever seen in my life. That captures the horrors of war and the brotherhood of being in a military unit as good as anything I've seen since Saving Private Ryan. I mean, it is unbelievably good. I remember I started watching it, so I didn't read the manga. I just watched the anime. And the first episode's a little slow, I'm not going to lie.
Nice.
And then it starts to get better. And then by like episode 5 or 6, I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is aimed at kids? Like, this is terrifying. I'm over here like deeply uncomfortable and just blown away. I'm blown away by Attack on Titan. It's cinema, man. It is like actual art. Very
it's incredible. It's incredible how they do this, and I'm very fascinated from Attack on Titan. So what is your favorite anime? Okay. Do you have a favorite one?
Oh, aggressively. I love this one so much that it should make people uncomfortable.
Okay.
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh. Why do you? Yes.
So
it has a lot of robots.
It has robots, so legitimately that was why I watched it in the beginning. I just wanted to see the the mecha. But that is a European art house film masquerading as a kid's cartoon. Yeah. It is so good from just an artistic standpoint of how much feeling and emotion can you convey through visual images. And again, it pushes the envelope and goes places where I'm like, what did I just see? Like, I cannot believe that just happened. Yes. But, even if you know the famous elevator scene, really, it's a single shot that lasts for like 3 minutes or whatever it is. And I remember as I'm watching it, I knew nothing about it. So I watch it because I hear that it's cool and it's got robots. So I'm like, rad, I'm going to watch this. But other than that, I don't know anything about it. I don't know how the world thinks about it. Nothing. I don't know that I'm about to get into like the most cinematic anime ever for me. I haven't seen any, like Akira is amazing, but doesn't hit the emotional beats for me that Neon Genesis hits. And so I start it and I'm just like, whoever made this is an artist of the highest caliber. And I'm like, this is so foreign. Like, you have to understand, for Japanese people hearing this, they're going to be like, what? Like they take it for granted that cartoons are treated with the same seriousness that film is treated. But in the West, that really isn't true. And most animation is either comedy or it's, like I said, 4-quadrant. It's aimed at parents and kids together. And so they're great and they're lovely. And don't get me wrong, I like them. Yeah. But I don't walk away from them very often thinking, oh my God, that was an artist at the height of their talent creating a cartoon. And I know that, and I forget the director's name. I know he was in a dark place when he created it, but what he created from that pain is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. If I had created that as an artist, I could walk away and just be like, yo, I did something of real quality. And then you see how it echoes through the generations, through the figurines and the fan art. I mean, it's just obviously grabbed a hold of people. And then the way that the mecha is so different because it has an organic quality. It's like, is it living? Is it a robot? Like, but in a way that's different than, say, Ghost in the Shell, where it's like consciousness, but in a robot. This is like organic. You feel it in its cries, the way that it moves, its design. It's just, it's breathtaking.
Yeah, I think Evangelion was created by Gainax, I think.
Yeah,
that's
Studio
right.
Gainax, yeah.
Yes, and I think at the very beginning, if I remember correctly, they even copied Disney a little bit. I think in the beginnings of anime, they looked at Disney and thought, oh, that's interesting. So they took Disney and made their own Japanese version of it. And then I think anime emerged. So I think that's very interesting too, because you want to become the next Disney and look at the Japanese.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
right?
That's
they started looking at Disney, then really have overtaken. Yeah, it is truly fascinating the way that cultures influence each other, overtake each other in importance. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. So how do you want to achieve? How do I say? How do you want to achieve this level of what anime and manga has in your own productions? Do you hire Japanese mangaka or animators, or?
If they're out there and they want to work for me, I would hire them in a heartbeat. So yes, that's part of the strategy. And before COVID, I had been to Japan, I think twice in like 3 or 4 months, and I had 2 more trips planned and was just gonna, be in Japan 4 or 5 times a year, setting up relationships with different creators and agents and publishers and the like. And then COVID hit, and so that slowed things down. But we have brought on Japanese speaking people into the company to help us do art outreach. Now, our primary reason for outreaching to Japan right now is specifically around NFTs, which I don't know. We're finding that a lot of people in Japan don't even know what NFTs are yet.
Yes, don't know.
So there's a big education there. But that'll be a great way for us to introduce ourselves to Japanese artists, help them make money, and then hopefully put them on projects. But we'd also like to work with people that have had success in Japan and are looking for that next challenge in their career to bring them to the US. This is something, it's akin to the way that the US made soccer, football to the rest of the world popular here in the US. Was we found, these amazing legacy players in Europe and then imported them to the US to make it more exciting and to show people just how good it could be. But we're also finding young talent that have young writers, young artists that have grown up reading manga, watching anime, and trying to help them learn the actual storytelling style that is, anime and manga. And so we've had luck with that, and we've had some successful projects launch, which we're very proud of. But now we're trying to ramp up by finding more mangaka for sure. So any Japanese writers or artists out there, let me tell you, we are hiring. So let us know.
Okay, I think a lot of mangaka would love to work with you. Especially the work conditions in Japan are not that good, I hear.
Yeah.
So I think there would be some mangaka who would be interested in this. So how is you were to Japan, you said before? How was it? Do you had any culture shock or?
No, I've spent the time that I have spent exclusively in Tokyo. I took one day trip outside, but for the most part it was just in Tokyo. And it is by far, I've been to many places on planet Earth, and Tokyo is by far my favorite city. It is unbelievable. If you haven't been to Tokyo, it's hard to grasp the scale of the city. It is massive. I mean, you can go up in the by the, what is it, the Sky Tower?
Yes.
Is that the name of it?
Yes, Sky Tower.
So there's a Sky Tree, thank you.
Sky Tree, yeah.
There's a building right next to it that has an observatory. I think it's on the 53rd or 55th floor. And so you're very high up and you're looking out and you can't see the edge of the city in any direction except for water. And so you're like, does this city ever end? So yeah, that's really, really extraordinary. So I loved it. Unfortunately, I don't speak the language, but just found the people to be incredibly lovely. I'm a huge fan of Tokyo street culture and the street style. So for me, going to Shinjuku, going to Harajuku, and shopping and all this, the stores was unbelievably fun. So yeah, I loved it.
Did you go to Akihabara?
Of course, like 30 times.
The anime mecca.
Yeah, so I bought so many boxes of manga just to have them like in the original Japanese, even though I can't read it. I had to ship it all back because I'm like, there's no way that I can take this. So yeah, I was definitely getting some sideways glances as I'd walk up to what's the name of the store? Is it Drake's?
I don't know exactly.
There's a really famous secondhand store there in Akihabara, and it's like 8 floors of just amazingness. So yeah, I spent a lot of money there for sure.
Yeah, I was there once because I live in Osaka, so I'm not that often in Tokyo. But it was amazing. We have in Osaka, they call it Denden Town. It's like Akihabara, but not that big. So it's Akihabara. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's so
crazy.
cool because you don't really have anything like that in the U.S. where it's just all concentrated on a subculture.
Yes.
And that was really fun. And to walk from shop to shop to shop and see all the different figurines and just if you're a fan, it really is Mecca.
It's incredible. Yes. So when you're making business with Japan, is there are some difficulties, or there are things that are really different to the US?
Yes. Yeah, that is the one thing I will say is that, in the US, we move at a different speed. Yeah. So, Japanese do business in a very traditional way. They're very cautious. They don't move quickly. And then just, unfortunately, I'm not doing myself any favors because I don't know all the proper etiquette and everything, so I'm sure I look like the brash American coming in. I have such a love for the culture and such a love for the art form, but definitely don't know how to communicate all of that in a way that will be understood. So yeah, that is a little difficult, and I'll be interested to see what comes of that over time. But my hope is that just by being consistent and adding value and showing them what we're building over here, that we can get some cool partnerships together.
Yeah, I hear this a lot, and I make this experience too in Japan. It's very slow, I think, and they need a lot of time in order to decide something. But when they
literally said to us, we pitched them something, and they're like, okay, we'll have an answer for you in a year. And I was like, what? I was literally shocked. I was like, in America, that's just a no.
Yes.
Like, yeah, we're not interested. Peace out. So, but they were like, oh yes, we're very interested, and we'll make a decision in a year. And I was like,
in a year?
Wow. Okay,
what?
that is different.
Yes, they're all about trust. So you have to trust your business partner, and you have to build a relationship, and it can take years. And yeah, that's even from a German standpoint, it's what? 5 years relationship building without nothing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And did you hear the famous phrase, "It's difficult," from the Japanese?
I haven't. No.
Oh, that's very good.
That made my radar.
That's very good, because when they say it's difficult, it often means no. I hear this a lot, and yeah, it's difficult. And as a German, you think, okay, it's difficult, but it's not impossible, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
There is a way, right?
Sleeves.
But when the Japanese say it's difficult, they really mean we don't want to do this.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I will definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's very good for you. So when you don't hear it, they are really interested.
That's funny.
So what do you think is the future of anime and manga? You talk a lot about NFTs, and what is your vision for anime and manga? How looks the future?
So we have to change the economics. So you alluded to earlier that there's just no money in it. When I hear how little an animator gets paid, and how little, quite frankly, that people pay for the animation. So it's not like, I don't think that there's people, just hoarding cash and starving their artists. There just isn't, there was that boom, in the late 80s where the economics, because of the not the DVD sales, but the VHS sales, where you could actually make money doing this, and, thusly could pay people better. But now those economics are really gone, and so much of anime is watched for free. And so until we address that, I don't think anything is going to change. I don't think that we're going to step into the future. But I think that NFTs change that. And I think through NFTs, we're going to be able to put a tremendous amount of the economics back into the equation. And so my only concern is, will the Japanese move quickly enough? And so, I certainly won't name names, but we have spoken to extraordinarily high-level people in the Japanese animation industry about NFTs. Okay. And that's where I got some of my, we'll let you know in a year. Okay. So I was just like, whew, guys, the NFT market moves so fast that if you're, waiting a year to even make a decision, now hopefully that's code for we're just going to do it ourselves, because I love the project so much. Like, even if they don't want to do it with us, it's like, I just want them to do it, because it's such a tremendous way for them to make, there's a project here in the US called Bored Ape Yacht Club. Okay. It's an NFT project. It's animated, or I should say it's drawn, but it isn't even animated yet. And it's already done over $200 million in revenue.
Okay.
So
Wow.
now imagine that you do that with a known franchise, right? You
Yes.
do an NFT drop with One Piece or Gundam. Oh my
Oh,
God. Like
that
it would
would be
be
incredible.
insane. So now
Yes.
imagine that you can make that same $200 million and you funnel that back into the studios that are
Oh,
doing this animation. So it's no longer just about, maybe the animation is generating 50 million, but if your
yes.
NFT strategy can generate 200 million and you wrap that into the payback of doing the anime, now all of a sudden there's real
Yes.
money in this.
Yeah.
And so I hope they see that this has changed everything. You have to give back to the community because the community is going to make a lot of that money. They're going to participate in that, but that
That's
only
right.
makes them more devoted. And so, look, who the people that are going to win, and of course, this is exactly our strategy, are going to be the people that enrich their community,
Yes.
leverage NFTs and the ownership that it gives to the community in order to pay the people on the project more, in order to scale up bigger, in order to beat some of the people that move slower, to
Yeah.
overtake the OG players in the space. So NFTs are the future of anime. And the more quickly the big brands adopt it, the more likely they are to survive into the future. Because look, it only takes 4 years for a kid to go from 11 to 15.
Yes.
If I catch them at 11 with my project, with
Yes.
NFTs, video games, things they're into, by the time they're 15, that age of imprinting, they've now imprinted on my project and not
Yes.
theirs. And
That's right.
so it doesn't take long when you have a disruptive moment like this, it doesn't take long to supplant the people that have been there for 40 years.
Yes. That would be incredible to merge anime with NFTs, I think.
Oh, it's going to happen for sure.
So I'm very excited. This is something I want to look in. I look forward to, and I hope the Japanese can adapt to this. So my crypto is very popular in Japan. Bitcoin, the most people know Bitcoin, and you have commercials in the television about Bitcoin and something.
Whoa.
But
Do you guys,
NFTs,
how do you say Bitcoin in Japanese?
to Bitcoin.
Nice. That's amazing. I love it.
Bitcoin. So they even had for housewives seminars for housewives where they
Whoa.
teach them to use Bitcoin and invest in
Oh man, I
Bitcoin.
love that. Was that the government?
I don't know whether it was the government or not. I don't know who
Wow,
was
I'm
it,
super curious about that.
but NFT, I never heard about NFT in Japan. So I heard a lot in of it in America and in interviews, but in Japan NFT is not really a thing yet, I think. But Bitcoin is, so I think when the Japanese understand NFT, it could shift. And
Dude, look, I am a one-man army for getting Japanese artists to understand NFTs. I
yes,
actually believe that Impact Theory, my company, is going to
yes,
be largely responsible for onboarding Japanese, Chinese, and Korean artists. We have full-time staff that all they do is reach out to artists day and night saying, hey, here's what NFTs are. We think you're amazing. We want to do a piece with you. And by the way, we're just a platform. So they're going to make, like 90% of the revenue. We just take a platform fee. So this isn't even us trying to partner with them. It's just us trying to say, this thing exists. Your art is amazing and would sell. And so, come be a part of this movement. So I think if we keep doing that over the next year, we're going to sign up hundreds of artists. And when those artists start making real money, then it's going to be, people racing to get in.
Yeah, that would be very, very great. So I hope you have a lot of success with this. So and
Thank you.
When I know an artist, I say I would recommend you.
Yeah, please, man. We'll take all the recommendations we can get.
Yeah, what do you like the most about Japan? That I also wanted to ask.
That's going to be really ephemeral and hard to put into words, but it is visually you guys have embraced an aesthetic that I love and that speaks to me, and you guys wear on your cultural sleeve in a way that we don't in the US. So there, going back to the most popular mall in America does not have a Gundam robot, right?
Yeah.
But you guys do. In America, we don't have an entire floor of, if you've ever been to the Gundam shop at Diver City Mall, it's massive. I mean, it's massive. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And, you know, that for me is absolutely incredible. You go to Harajuku and you see people dressed up basically in cosplay, right? Just walking around, having fun. It's, you know, so unique. And the way that the different subcultures have their space. So the first time I went to Akihabara, there was what in the US we call a pop-up shop. I don't know what you guys call it, where it's a store, but it's only there for 4 days.
Yes.
And for Gundam and Neon Genesis Evangelion figurines. And I was like, what is happening? Like, two of my favorite things on planet Earth, right? And you know, you can go in. The city is so old meets new, right? It's high tech, but as you go through the city, you realize, like, wait a second, there's like this really old part of town right next to, you know, these giant skyscrapers. And so I'm looking over here, the building looks like it's 350 years old. I look over here and it looks, you know, high tech and brand new. And that was extraordinarily cool. And then, man, the people are insanely polite. They are extraordinarily clean. I was a little freaked out. There are no trash cans anywhere, but no dirt on the ground. I was like, what is happening? It's a lot of things. The fashion there, I find just unbelievable. And then you see anime in ads everywhere, right? There's manga shops all over the place.
You can buy manga in
don't
Konbini.
Get that here.
Yeah, you can buy it in
So
Konbini.
cool.
It's everywhere. Yes, right. So my last question is, what is your purpose and drive, and how it connects with your vision of impact theory and manga and anime? What exactly do you want to achieve?
Okay, so the human mind is a learning machine. Unfortunately, it learns things by accident most of the time. And so people grow up, and depending on what their parents tell them, what their friends tell them, what society tells them, they take on as truth without ever questioning it. And so most people become adults and they don't like themselves. They don't have an optimistic view of their future. They don't know how to make their dreams come true. And, you know, you get what in the West anyway, we call the quarter life crisis. So you're 25 years old and you feel lost, hopeless, scared, alone, unhappy, sliding towards depression, anxiety, like it's just on the rise, right? And what I realize is that you can actually change that, and you can change somebody's mindset. They can learn new things. They can believe new things. And so once you show them how to believe things that empower them to learn new skills, and that once they have new skills, they can go do whatever they want in the world, because skills have utility, right? Think of, in fact, there's a bridge over your shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
That bridge, right, in real life, somebody had to learn about what's called tensile strength. They had to learn about architecture. They had to learn about weight bearing and all those things. But by learning all that, by getting that skill set, they were able to build something that connects two land masses over water, and that people can walk or drive. Like, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
And once you realize, okay, wait a second, I don't read a book to check a box. I don't go to school to impress my family. I learn something so that I can change the world, whether it's building a bridge, creating the fireworks that I see behind you, whether it's writing a story, whether it's being a medical doctor and saving a life. Like, skills have real life utility. They do something. And you can realize that at any age, and then put yourself on the path of going and getting the skills that give you joy and fulfillment. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So I asked myself, how do you do that? How do you retrain people? And the difficult answer is, it's much easier to train them when they're young. And it's much easier to train them in that age of imprinting, 11 to 15. And then, not unsurprising, that you guys have something that, as far as I know, Shonen translates to the few years, literally the age of imprinting. And in those few years, you guys have developed a story style that encourages friendship, self-improvement, picking yourself up when you fail, like all the life lessons.
Yeah.
So I want to create a studio that makes one kind of story where you're learning how to improve yourself. You're encountering those ideas of what we call a growth mindset, that you can learn something, that you can get better, that even if you really are a loser today, you don't have to be a loser tomorrow. Like you can actually learn and get better. And so through storytelling, my hope is that I can give the gift of mindset to everybody.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
So I wish you all the best, and I hope that you can, you have success with impact theory and your vision. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. And thanks for reaching out to me.
Yeah, thank you for answering me and having this interview. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.